So I have the best slot of the day. It's just between you and drinks. So if I'm going to be as quick as I can along the way. Thank you for staying. I really appreciate it. I want to start with a quote by William Gibson, who's a writer. And he said, "The future's already here. It's just not very evenly distributed." And listening to all the speakers today, it became pretty clear we're all believers in the Internet of Things, and that's good. Some of us are very optimistic and think that life is going to get much easier very soon. Some of us are a bit more pessimistic and feel that we need a few more years and a few more challenges to come across before it really gets going, and therefore it's just the beginning. And I think the reality is the truth somewhere in the middle. If I take a look at the promise is very simple for what we're talking about. We believe our devices and our environment should be able to provide very proactive and very personalized experience, whether that's the wearables that we have with the health and fitness that actually give us some insight about our lifestyle, whether that's asset management, knowing where different devices are out in the world and how we optimize that, or even in how we consume energy. Our goals are very simple: increase productivity, decrease wastage, increase the customer connection, and really create some new business opportunities. And there are many use cases that we've heard today and that we've seen around that are really starting to put this to bear. But I would say they're relatively isolated solutions. Each solution sort of stands alone. And I think we really need to look at something that changes. We need to move away from this evolution of standalone systems to a revolution of ecosystems that are actually connected together for a process. So let me take a simple example. Here's the connected home. And imagine you're in this standalone world where you're getting notifications from your refrigerator that you're out of butter. You're getting your notifications from your energy system saying, hey, this is how much energy you're consuming. Getting a reminder that you've got a guest coming. And meanwhile, you also get a warning that the window upstairs just opened as part of your security system. I'm not sure that's a simpler, personalized context. We got a lot of data. I guess the question is, how do we use that? How do we avoid generating an even more difficult problem about information overload? I think we need some intelligent filtering. I think we need some context to provide a better experience. Perhaps we suppress the energy usage information that's coming out at a point in time until that's more relevant for us to act on. Maybe it's appropriate to tell us about the warning that the windows come up because we need to catch our son before he climbs out the window and send him down to the shop to get butter before our guest arrives. But we need to make some choices. We need some context, I think, to make all this stuff work. So to that end, I think there's a shift coming where we're going to move away from these closed systems where single-purpose solution sets are being put together for the Internet of Things to a more open model where they can start to exchange information. And I think if we can make them context-aware, we can get to a much better outcome. For all of us, that also means we get improved scale because each group doesn't have to solve the solution themselves. In fact, they can start to aggregate information together and share in that economy. So let's talk about this network effect. So let's take a look at an ecosystem of ecosystems out of something we look at as a smart city. So let's say that we've got sensors in the park that's actually a humidity sensor, and we use that to tell people when to go water the plants in the park. Well, theoretically, that same humidity sensor should be telling some information, sharing information with the traffic system. Hey, it's raining in this part of the city, so let's actually slow down the speed limit in a particular area because we know that traffic's going to get congested during rain. Certainly that's true here. Let's also take that same information and feed that to our emergency system so we can potentially reroute our ambulances around an area that has congestion within traffic. So now Same information starting to be fed to different ecosystems. So I think when that happens, that's when you start to get that power of economy or the network effect. On a very personal level, even taking a look at your phone, your fitness band, and your Bluetooth headphones that you're working through, we're already doing that to improve our personal health. But theoretically, that same information should be shareable with our doctor, who can then take a look at some of the goals we've jointly set about our health and maybe give us some better ways to manage our own health. In the end, if I go to all of these different ecosystems, they will align around very different sets of values. But to categorize it fairly simply, one set of goals may be around reducing costs. So if I can run my system better, if I understand how the person interacting with the real world, I should be able to optimize that. So going back to my example, my personal fitness, there's no reason that while the goal for that is actually about a lifestyle and reducing my health costs, I shouldn't be able to borrow my wearable and have it interact with my system at work. So that if there's an incident at work, my wearable should be able to tell me where I'm at within the building, and I should be able to then route my person via the phone out to the most safe exit route. So let those two ecosystems with potentially different goals interact. If I take a look at an opportunity to increase revenue, a lot of focus in the connected home has been around managing energy consumption, which is a cost reduction. But just like I have my smart coffee maker, which can talk and tell how much energy it's consuming, it should also understand what products I'm using and maybe realize based on my usage of that device that it could potentially offer a service to order the coffee before it runs out and therefore become a new revenue stream for the manufacturer. So it's not just about a smart coffee maker that can help save energy, but one that can also actually add an on-sale service to the consumer. There are also some moves around new business models. And those are things that as we start to make a much more smart and context-aware environment, we can actually drive new sets of businesses. So in hospitals, one of the things Accenture's looked at is the medical equipment. And it turns out that a lot of hospitals lose a lot of time trying to find the expensive equipment around the hospital. So if the equipment is smart, then I can actually take those sensors in the equipment and help the staff find those machines when they need them, which will obviously help the hospital work much more efficiently. But by the same token, the manufacturers of those smart medical devices can aggregate that information together that the things are collecting and start to detect events that might actually drive better diagnosis across a scale that any hospital can't do on its own. Because I can now get information about these devices in multiple hospitals around the country and therefore actually come up with potentially something like a diagnosis as a service from the manufacturer to help the hospitals detect those situations much better than they could have on their own. So let's pick just a couple simple examples. I'll pick one, which is the ecosystem is a mine, and in this case, we're taking a look at the ecosystem of the operations of a mine and also the connected vehicle model, which would then be for the manufacturer. And if you combine those two, you can get something fairly interesting. So the device manufacturer, the car manufacturer, wants to embed smart sensors into their vehicles, and they use that as an on-sale feature. But part of that insight can also be used to help them figure out how their trucks and how their vehicles are used in the real world, which then feeds back to their designers to get a much better design of the next generation of that car. At the same time, for the mine, if they can digitize all of the activities in the mine, they can detect when one of the loaders is starting to get full based on the sensors and send an empty truck in before the other one's full, therefore keeping the diggers actually very active and efficient through the mine. So it turns out to be a benefit to both sets of ecosystems, both for the miner and also for the vehicle manufacturer. Another example is taking a look at the retailers and the suppliers. And at Mobile World Congress, we showed a connected fitting room. The idea is pretty simple. Inside the fitting room, you actually have a sensor that as you take the items in to change, it may help you order, oops, I need a different size. I've tried this on, it doesn't fit, so I can actually use the intelligence inside the fitting room to request another size to be brought by one of the staff. At the same time, while I'm doing that, now the fitting room knows about the device, the clothes I picked, and it may suggest, oh, with this pair of pants, here's a suggestion for a top. So it can help the person with the shopping experience actually get the right size, get an upsell or recommended set of products, and in fact integrate in their loyalty and their coupon model so that you can say, well, here's a discount for you personally, all without them leaving the fitting room. So in that case, that actually leaves you in a much more efficient retail perspective. In Asia, sometimes I would say the retail experience is also a social experience. So one of the questions is, could you actually get advice from your friends about other things that they like from there? But that's not where we started. Nonetheless, that gives you a combination of retail plus the clothes manufacturer who now gets insight about the clothes that are being tried on and bought at the store. And there's also a financial services component around potentially closing the sale without them having to stop at the register. Last example I'll bring out is moving things from being products to being services. So in this case, today if you want to buy tires, you actually go and decide when you want to do this, then you go buy 4 sets of tires. We have one client in the US that actually embedded sensors in the tires, and rather than selling you 4 tires, they sell you a service which says, I will use the sensors to detect when you need to change the tires, and I will rent you a renewable revenue source to actually give you tires as a service. In that case, it increases the safety for the consumer, because in some cases they don't know, when's an appropriate time to replace the tires or not. And for the manufacturers, it gives them a repeat revenue and a long-term relationship with that customer. So lots of examples of using Internet of Things to actually drive some new business models, either for reducing costs, improving revenue, or completely different business model. But listening to the conversations today, there's a lot of challenges to where we're trying to get to. There's a lot of data that's going to be coming through. When I was in China, I asked CIOs, do you have enough data to make good decisions? And they said no. I said, if I give you more data, will you make better decisions? No. Because it wasn't about the data, there was already too much. And now we're talking about taking an order of magnitude leap in data. So yes, there's a lot to deal with. Second, as I just mentioned, these closed ecosystems are actually pretty expensive for each party, because they are responsible for getting all of the sensors, all of the networks, everything pulled together pretty much by themselves. And it's really difficult to know where to start in this early stages of the Internet of Things. And I want to close off my conversation just around where you might start. So I will say this, no matter which role you have in the ecosystem, I think there's a way to participate in this that can help you capture value pretty soon. So whether you're in the technology space and you are embedding those sensors in your customers' products, whether you're an entrepreneur looking to take the data that is collected and actually bring new value-added services, or whether you're a consultant trying to help people figure out how to make money, lots of different opportunities, I think, in this space. So the first thing I think you need to do is identify the value that you see your company should really focus on. Are you going to focus on the operational data to take your ecosystem and your business cases about making a better use of that device? Or is yours much more about enabling a new set of services, a new capability? And concentrate on what information you want to take advantage of. I think regardless of which role you're in, I don't think any organization can solve all the problems on their own, so you want to think about the ecosystem of partners you want to interact with the solution. You know, who else can you invite to come in and help innovate and add value to your solution? And it may not be something that you thought of initially, but the network effect says as each person adds value to that same solution set, the value to the end consumer is going to go up substantially. And that's where we want to play. The other thing I think you need to think about is how to monetize this. What's the business case for gathering this data and turning this into a service? And I think it really requires a new thinking about your role. So if you're a device manufacturer, you need to think about what data you're going to make available out of that device. And it may not be for your single purpose. It may be for multiple ecosystems. So be clear what data you have. I was listening to one of the earlier speakers, and they said, how much data should each device or smart participant give? And the answer was as much as it possibly can, because you can't envision how all that stuff may be used. So data in, very important. From an API and SDK perspective, how do I consume that data to drive new sets of services? And I think if I can work through what data is available, I might be able to combine that in some interesting ways. From an analysis perspective, I think the number one thing to do is to provide some context, because you're going to end up offering information to your end consumer. They want to make a decision that's right for that context. So spending time on what data is appropriate for the solution you're at, and should I do it within this context? I think one of the examples I heard was, I've got a phone, I've got a laptop, and I've got a Pebble, I think is what he had. He said the problem is the focus to date has been on consistency. So when he gets a warning for his next meeting, his laptop buzzes, his phone buzzes, and so does his Pebble. So that's probably not a desirable situation. I need the context that says when they're all close together, only give me a warning on one. So think about context in terms of that data set to then deliver services that are context aware and personalized for that end customer. I think if you can get that ecosystem right, you can actually drive a lot of value from the Internet of Things. So on that camp about the future being really near but just not evenly distributed, I think I fall on I'm an optimist side of the fence, which says technology is already here. It's very possible to drive these things, and I think in the end it's up to us to participate in a set of consistent ecosystems that help drive value to make it happen. So with that, I think I finished in time for you guys to get to drinks on time. So thank you very much.